What is up, enthusiasts? It is Cedar Flags here, and welcome back to another one of my videos. So, I am going to merge two of my favorite subjects to talk about in this YouTube video. The first being my Never Built series. I love looking in the archives of the amusement park industry and looking at never built attractions. It just fascinates me in a very weird way. And so today we are going to be looking at that, but also relating to my other favorite subject, Cedar Point. A park that is so near and dear to me, it's basically half of my content on this channel. And this video is going to add more to that. But instead of talking about a currently existing coaster or a defunct coaster, we are going to be talking about a never built expansion to the Cedar Point chain. Today, we are going to be talking about a set of amusement parks that were proposed in the 1970s to further Cedar Point, but never came into fruition. Before I start the video, I want to give a huge shout out to my friend Colin at CoasterCoin for pitching this idea and mentioning a lot of the research that went into this video. So without further ado, this is Cedar Flags, and today we are going to be talking about Cedar Point's never built sister parks. Our story begins all the way back in the late 1960s. Cedar Point was doing better than ever in its business perspective, and they were really succeeding at aiming to become the Disneyland of the Midwest. It was a very successful park and a destination that people traveled to. Their expansions were getting bigger, and they truly were turning into a state-of-the-art park. In the late 60s, they came out with Frontier Town, with the Frontier Trail expansion in Phase 2, and basically doubled the size of the park. This included many attractions, one being the Cedar Creek Mine Ride. This, at the time, was a very state-of-the-art roller coaster, one of the only built at the time by Aerodynamics. And around this time as well, Cedar Point came out with the CP&LE Railroad, standing for Cedar Point in Lake Erie. This was a state-of-the-art railroad and resembled the times of old. The whole area was themed after the old American West, and continues to do so today. After enthusiasts all over saw this, they knew that Cedar Point was taking this whole thing very seriously. And they did not stop there. In 1975, they decided to break a record that was never attempted thus far. It was to be the first roller coaster to go upside down not once, not twice, but 3 separate times throughout its layout. This was the Corkscrew. Still running today, this was one of the most iconic coasters all the way back in the 1970s. But they wanted to show their creativity in a way that they never attempted before. What were they going to do? Well, instead of their next big expansion being within the park's borders, they wanted to branch out. They wanted to make a sister park, another park owned by Cedar Point, that would try to draw in tourists from the area. So, throughout the mid-70s, Cedar Point and the associates with it decided to sit down and survey hundreds of acres of land. Their goal was to build a sister park of Cedar Point that would be located right in the center in between Detroit and Chicago, 2 major cities at the time. So today, we are going to look at those 2 properties of land that were publicly proposed by Cedar Point, but never ended up being built in the long run. Irish Hills and Battle Creek. Let's get into them. Like I said, Cedar Point analyzed dozens, if not hundreds of plots of land in this general area in southern Michigan. And the first that they came along that they thought could be a more successful plot of land was located in northern Cambridge Township, Michigan, located near the Michigan International Speedway. This was announced all in December 20th, 1974. The officials over at Cedar Point decided to rent out a high school gym and, in front of over 700 people, reveal the plans of the new Irish Hills amusement park. So, what was it going to be, and what did we miss out on? Well, the park would have been themed all around the late 1800s and early 1900s American West, very similar to how the Frontier Trail and Frontier Town were at Cedar Point. The whole park would have this theme, and it would include some very similar attractions that were located at Cedar Point. One of them being a railroad system that would be very similar to the Cedar Point and Lake Erie Railroad, but more authentic. Another attraction would be a 250-foot white observation tower, very similar to the Space Spiral, which used to operate at Cedar Point as well. Other plans included a boat ride, something similar to Cedar Point's Snake River Expedition, a record-breaking Ferris wheel, which we don't really know too much information about, but finally, a racing wooden coaster. Now, it is not specified if the wooden coaster was going to be a hybrid or a full wooden coaster entirely, but people say that it had a very similar layout to Gemini, and many people say that this was originally going to be where Gemini was located if this park was successful, and the park looked very promising at this point. So, what made this park not end up happening? Well, the controversy was started by the locals, saying that they need to save the Irish Hills and not turn their small village into a tourism haven. And even though that they had the speedway, this would cause so much more traffic. And many people saw that it was also very close to Cedar Point, which caused even more complaints, and eventually, plans were cancelled in April of 1975. The next project that we are going to be talking about is a little northwest of the original location. If you don't know, Cedar Point was not giving up at that one failure. They were going to look at plans for another area and a new sister park. This next park was going to be located in Battle Creek, Michigan, near the city of Kalamazoo, and it was going to be even bigger, but less focused on theming and more focused on rides. Here's what we know. On August 4th, 1976, Cedar Point announced that they signed a purchase agreement for a plot of land in Battle Creek, Michigan, and it was going to be a whopping 760 acres. If you don't know, that's more than twice the size of the Cedar Point Peninsula. This was going to be huge, and there was going to be a lot with it. They were going to add a massive resort with a ride-centric amusement park that was going to be to the likes of Cedar Point. Though, Cedar Point did not get as far in the planning phase as they did with Irish Hills. In fact, they never had a major public demonstration announcing some of the rides that would be located here, though it is assumed that some of the rides that would be located there were to be moved here. In April of 1977, Cedar Point ended up pulling the plug on the Battle Creek idea. So, why did they? Well, they looked at a few analytics and demographics at the time and noticed that the area was declining in population and industry. And the location today, actually ironically, is an industrial area. So even though it's extremely fun to look at these concepts for amusement parks that were never built, we have to get back into the realm of reality. None of these parks ended up being built, which is very unfortunate, but at the time, Cedar Point was still not going to give up on building a new park. They thought more about some different plots of land that haven't been revealed, but they decided that they would go through another strategy, not building a park from scratch, but expanding off of a currently existing park. And that led them to make the decision in 1978 to purchase Valley Fair, located near Minneapolis, Minnesota. This was their first successful attempt at expanding the chain. And eventually in the 1980s, they decided to make a chain as a whole and name it Cedar Fair, off of the two parks that they currently own. So let me know down in the comments below what you thought of this video. Did you know all of the information I gave you, or did you learn a few new facts? I, to say the least, learned a bunch while researching for this video, even though I know just about everything about the peninsula in Sandusky, Ohio. So let me know what you thought about this video in the comments below. Let me know if you have any other stories about Cedar Point in that time period. This is Cedar Flags, and I'll see you all later.